All right, folks, it's time for Game 3 of Malifaux 4th Edition Beta. This time I am playing Kaeris 1 against my friends Dreamer 2. You can check the table here for the terrain. I think this is really what you're going to see now for Malifaux tables moving forward. Like you can see here, it's a good mix of various height terrain, good flat surfaces that you could place models on. That's kind of what we're looking for here. And again, this is probably around closer to 50% of the board covered in terrain. My friend won the attacker defender flip, and we ended up with collapsing mines. And then for the schemes, it was like ensnare, shape the land, and public demonstration, if I recall. Now, one thing to point out here, I did play Collapsing Mines in that previous game, as you may note, but the rules had changed since then, and now the mechanics for Collapsing Mines are slightly different. There's no longer an underdog mechanic to actually collapse the mines, so they're just not collapsing mines, just mines, which is a little disappointing. I would love it if the mines still collapsed, but yeah. Okay, so let's attempt to figure out my opponent's list. He had Dreamer 2, Chompy, obviously. He had Capellius, Serena Bowman. He had a Widow Weaver, a Bandersnatch, and I think the rest of the models were like Insidious Madness. Trying to remember if there was anything else. There probably was, and I don't remember. So, yeah, apologies. But yeah, that's what he had, I believe. And then for me, I'm taking Kaeris 1, Eternal Flame. I took Howard Langston. I took the Boilermaker, which I proxied using the mechanical rider. I also took a Scorpius, which I thought I owned, but I also proxied using the White Stag. So apologies for all the proxies, guys. I'm also taking I forget, the Firestarter and the Arcane Emissary and one Mech Arachnid to round it out. All right, so one of the highlights in turn 1 was my opponent brought Capellius all the way down my left flank and tagged that mine there in the corner. You can see on the left there. And I brought the Firestarter over and the Scorpius. Sorry, it's still a White Stag. And using the fire, I was able to drag Capellius all the way over using his speed 8 and kind of torture Capellius. Yeah, that's really strong. That Light the Fire is actually a really good ability. The Firestarter is just a really strong model. In fact, later in the turn, I was able to get Ensnare off on Capellius. The Scorpius having the ability to drop a scheme marker kind of past him and set him on fire, and then I believe I stuck the other scheme marker using the Eternal Flame over there. So early in this turn, my opponent is using his just flat out higher speed to get to these corners and start clicking these objectives for collapsing mines. What I ended up doing was, and you can see the Steampunk Arachnid there on the other side of the board of that center marker, is now that I completed Ensnare, I wanted to also score Frame Job. So I put the Arachnid over there, who's later going to get attacked by Chompy, and I'll be able to score that scheme as well. So pretty strong turn out of the gate for me. Also turn 1, he had a Delirium moving up with Dreamer 2, and I didn't like the look of it. I don't remember if it was summoning things or I know Dreamer 2 was summoning things, but I blamed the Delirium, and it's like giant walls of text. I didn't want to read all the text or understand it, so I just killed it with Extreme Prejudice between the Boilermaker, the Arcane Emissary, and Howard there. That's a pretty rough spot for that thing to be in. So by the end of turn one, my opponent had secured like 3 of the mines, and I had secured 2. He didn't score his scheme, and I'm trying to remember which one. He wasn't going for ensnare. He was going for something else, and then I ended up scoring ensnare, and I ended up scoring frame job. So the pretty strong turn out of the gate for me. I'm pretty sure I had, I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 victory points off schemes immediately, but yeah, strong turn one for me. Also, wanted to point out too that between the portal from the Boilermaker and the Arcane Emissary being able to channel spells through it, just radically increased my threat across the board. And I felt like there just wasn't a place, and also with Command Construct and Light of Fire, there really wasn't much getting away from me in terms of being able to spread across the board, and with these big monstrous robot things, really just sort of punch things that are right in front of me. So, um, so yeah, I managed to put a decent chunk of damage into Dreamer, and also the Widow Weaver. But then, my opponent was able to just heal pretty much all of it back with Serena. Like, Serena is like crazy good healer. Um, but other than that, once I really started to get punching on things and get an advantage there, now I'm starting to gain an activation advantage. Now the schemes are becoming easier. I'm across the board. I'm able to flip the mines easier than he is, and I have all this like action economy. And this is where he's having a tough time keeping up with that. Dropping summons on me, trying to blow them up. But even with that, like all the remains markers on the board, I'm pulling those and just healing those too. Also, with all the remains markers sitting around, I am able to not only just keep my big robots healed, I'm also able to summon spiders, which are super clutch again. And with Latch On just being such a great ability, and being able to shoot at the models that have been latched onto, I feel like I'm playing Ramos again, which made me like really, really happy. Like, I missed Ramos quite a bit. And I don't care if Kaeris 1 plays more like Ramos. In fact, I might even just use, I was telling a buddy of mine, I might just use a Ramos model as Kaeris 1, although I do love my Kaeris 1 model. But I just miss Ramos, and so that was really cool. So turn 2, we end up tying on the strategy, and I do not score a scheme this turn, and I think he ends up scoring Search the Land on that house there. You can see the like insidious madness that's over there, that he's going to end up like leaping around and placing some scheme markers around there. And there's not that much going on fighting wise. Like, we're doing little bits of damage to each other and then just like healing them up. So it was more of a sort of like a push and pull in the middle, but I definitely felt like I had the advantage once I killed that delirium, and was just able to just keep damage pressure on Dreamer and Widow Weaver in there. Turn 3 is really where the scales tip in my favor. I'm winning some kind of critical defensive duels against his heavy hitters, and at the same time, I was able to secure the rooftops on the far side of the board between the Scorpius and Firestarter. So just all that extra action economy between those two models. I was able to score the 2 VP version of that on 3 different rocks. And now I'm like in his backfield with the Emissary and with Howard, and able to put pressure on the back mines back there. And he's having a hard time just like keeping up with my significant AP. So he's still dropping a bunch of summons on me, but he's kind of half committed to that and half committed to fighting, and it's not really paying off with that sort of diverted strategy. We talk about it after, and he was thinking maybe he would have done a little bit better had he jammed up my my big models by just dropping a bunch of summons on them and just sort of stuffing the board and making it so that I couldn't really move around. The issue with that strategy, though, is that Arcane Rush, and I had printed out the May 8th version of the Emissary. I did not print out today's version of the Emissary, unfortunately, where they rightly nerfed that ability. But at the end of the game, I was able to just like push models away and continue to interact with the mines. That said, I mean, I still had a pretty strong lead on the game for the most part. Ended up killing Capellius late in the like third turn, and just prevented him from really, getting to the objective in the back of my deployment zone. But I was able to get to his and flip that. And like I said, I maxed on Search the Rooftop, so I already had my 5 VP for schemes. So going into turn 4, I didn't really need to score any schemes. I really could just focus on the strategy and score there. So with that, the final score was 8-5 in my favor. Again, I was able to score all of those schemes very early, and then really just focus on the back half of the game on continuing to win the strategy. All right, so how did I feel about the game? And then how did I feel about Kaeris 1 and Wildfire? So starting with the game, this was a very, very long game. This game took around 4 hours to play. I'm a little embarrassed to admit that, but it's the truth. Despite the fact that my opponent and I are pretty experienced Malifaux players, this was some of our first times playing this crew. This is the first time I played Wildfire. And, things get updated every week. So we're reading constantly on how to do things. And then we're realizing, oh, my activation order could have been better, or, I could have handled that better. But it was a long game. And I don't think it was intended to go that long. But it was a good game in terms of, killing like to a certain degree pays off. Because like I said, you're able to maintain an AP advantage over your opponent. That worked out really well in my case. Whereas, if you kill too much, then you run the risk of not scoring, and your opponent, while being outnumbered, if you're just focusing on trying to kill your opponent generally has ways to sort of slip away and start scoring strats and schemes that way. So I think this is another one of those games where, my major advantage is in playing a keyword master that are a bit more straightforward than my opponent, and therefore I could really focus in on, the mechanics of winning the game itself. I'm not like sweating too much over things like activation order and that sort of thing. Okay, so how do I feel about Wildfire, Kaeris 1 and 2? One thing that's really interesting about Wildfire is I feel like the different versions of Kaeris are almost two completely different crews. The hiring pools are very different between Kaeris 1 and Kaeris 2. Kaeris 1, you almost play more like Ramos, like I said. You're going to want a lot of constructs, whereas Kaeris 2, you're going to want a lot of cult models. And they are very different, and that's pretty exciting. It just seems really strong. Kaeris 1 was stronger than I thought it would be. I knew that it was fast and mobile. It could hit reasonably hard, but that action economy with command construct and light of fire and Kaeris ability is just really, really good. I'm glad they nerfed Arcane Rush because I just feel like that was really strong, but they have so many strong abilities in the keyword. I think I really enjoy playing Wildfire. So far, they're the most fun crew I've played. I plan on playing them a lot more, and like I said, I just really enjoy that experience. So that's going to do it for this video. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.